everyone. The School Innovation and Turnaround Committee is now called to order. Roll call, please.
Okay, Mr. Pale?
Here.
Mr. Pale is present. Dr. Armstrong? Here. Dr. Armstrong is present. Mr. Birkin? Mr. Birkin is not present. Mr. Castillo?
Yes.
Mr. Castillo is present. Ms. Champagne? Ms. Champagne is not present. Dr. Clark?
Present.
Dr. Clark is present. Mr. Harris? Mr. Harris is not present. Mr. Hollis?
Here.
Mr. Hollis is present. Ms. Holloway?
Here.
Ms. Holloway is present. Ms. Mallory?
Here.
Miss Mallory, I'm sorry. So you know. Ms. Mallory is present. Mr. Morris?
Here.
Mr. Morris is present. You have a quorum.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next item, please.
The first item is on page 1, item 2.1, consideration of an update report regarding STEM, innovative approach to student learning. The recommendation is to receive.
Can I get a motion, please? Moved by Mr. Appel, seconded by Mr. Morris. Is there a report?
I believe Dr. Coleman of STEM will be presenting this particular item.
All right. Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to come out and speak to you a little bit about the Law STEM initiative. With me today I have Summer Dan from LSU Region 2, as well as Daphne Barnes representing Region 1 over in New Orleans. So what I want to talk to you about a little bit today is on the PowerPoint slides. I'm not sure if we're able to get them to go up there or not, but yeah, there we go. Is ultimately, first of all, to give you a little bit of a background on myself and what Law STEM is, and why it's so important for what we do here in the state of Louisiana. So here you see a picture of myself on the left, raised on my farm in Ohio. The only thing I knew about STEM was what I saw in front of me. As we say a lot, they can only be what we can see. And so at the time in the 80s, there was this gentleman on the right that was telling me that I should be a fighter pilot. And so I went through the motions thinking that I wanted to be a fighter pilot, loved everything about it, until I got to high school and I realized, oh, there's no waiver in the 90s for flying if you have a corrective vision. So I found myself as a senior in high school with no plan. Actually, my graduation pamphlets program still shows me as Navy, and I never got a chance to do that because I wasn't able to fulfill the fighter pilot. So a family friend of mine at the time was working on his master's at a local college, and he says, come and take a look at what we're doing. And that's what you see there on the right. Very simple, but it's a petri plate that is growing an artificial skin equivalent for burn victims. And I was so fascinated that I jumped into that realm and I went and got my bachelor's in biology, a master's in toxicology with the Air Force, and ultimately a PhD that brought me down here to Tulane, where I was able to work on microbial genetics with NASA, and then ultimately had 6 launches up to the International Space Station. And then this little thing called Hurricane Katrina happened, which caused me to have to redirect my studies to the Primate Center up in Covington, where I finished with a PhD in molecular genetics looking at infectious diseases. And ultimately, my very first job outside of that was working at Delgado, raising my little one that you can see sitting there to my left, or my right, I guess, in that picture. Raising him, doing a lot of STEM outreach at Delgado, built several programs at Delgado, including their Science Laboratory Technologies program, that ultimately led to a 2017 40 under 40 in the Gambit, which then led me to the Dean of STEM at Fletcher, and ultimately where I'm at now as a program administrator at Law STEM. So why is that important? Why is it important to go through and explain what STEM is? Because I still today have people tell me, oh, you work on plants? No, it's not, that's what we do. So we got to go back in the past and say, why do we even talk about STEM? What is it that we're trying to do? So in the 90s, the NSF said they recognized there was a lot of 21st century careers that were coming to focus that we didn't have the graduates for. And they said, well, which of those programs are it? And they said sciences, math, engineering, and technology, right? Everything we think of STEM, but they called it SMEN at the time. So for 10 years, as you can see my timeline at the bottom, the NSF was trying to message this, but was ultimately messaging it with an acronym that made no sense to anybody. In 2001, they changed that to STEM. And also we had a lot of momentum along with the administration at the time, used it as one of their initiatives to increase the number of graduates in these fields. But then about 10 years later, we started seeing a lot of folks asking, well, what about the other letters? I'm sure when you started this conversation, some of you were asking yourselves where the other letters were, the A's and the E's that you might want to add to STEM. And so we started having these conversations, and I started recognizing that a lot of people were talking the right talk. We had teachers, we had administrators all wanting the same thing, but they were using the acronyms and getting lost in the acronyms. Well, why aren't you adding arts? Why aren't you adding economy, music, medicine? And we ultimately ended up with steamed hams, as I like to joke. Science, technology, engineering, arts, math, humanities, anthropology, music, and such, right? You know, people are just lost. They're trying to figure out what it is we're trying to do with STEM, and ultimately we're fighting with each other is what I noticed a lot. And so why is this important? As we know, education's constantly evolving. This graph that you see is pretty straightforward, but it's pretty profound too. In the 1900s, human knowledge was thought to double every 100 years. After World War II, it was thought to double every 25 years. IBM just released a study in 2020 saying human knowledge is doubling every 12 hours. There's no way for a teacher to stay as the content expert. We have to be able to help them facilitate the knowledge to their students, as well as we always have to pay attention to the knowledge half-life. How long is that knowledge even relevant? By the time we get it approved and into the classroom, it may be old knowledge with this fact that knowledge is doubling every 12 hours. So we have to do something different, which is the initiative of LOSTEM. We are all about trying to get the facilitation of the ownership of the information to the students in this accelerated learning environment. We think about all these different buzzwords that you see surrounding the picture I have there. That's an AI-generated picture of a teacher. And I asked the question, what is a teacher thinking when you put all these words in front of them? And I think it actually gave me a pretty good visual of what a teacher probably is thinking, trying to figure out how do we bring all these different ideas into the classroom and which ones are the most important. And so what we like to do is we like to think of these buzzwords as simply as tools. Think about like when chalkboard came into the classroom or a pencil. These were new inventions, calculator. We had to figure out ways to incorporate them into the classroom. And so that's what we try to do with LOSTEM as well. So, what is LOSTEM? We are actually, the full name is the Louisiana Science, Technology, Engineering, and Mathematics Advisory Council. It was passed as Act 392 of the 2017 legislative session, and it calls for a 29-member council that's housed at the Board of Regents. And so I have them broken up here, the seats. On the left, you see the ones that are associated more with K-12. Up in the top right, we have our higher education, and in the bottom right, we have our workforce. And these group was brought together in 2017 to meet quarterly to try to find ways to bring STEM education into every single classroom in the state. And we're not talking just K-12. We're talking pre-K to grade. We do everything from working with the little ones up to adult workforce. And so the whole goal is to bring STEM education into the classrooms and connect it to the workforce that we have here in our state. Now, that's great for a council to have as an initiative, but how do we actually implement it? So the first couple of years, the council looked around this nation and looked for ways that we were, what other states were doing well, and we went with the regional center approach. And in 2020, the regional centers were established and seated with our first $1 million in allocation from the legislation, from the legislators, I'm sorry. And so what you see here is the breakdown of where the centers are located and the directors that are involved. So as I said, we have Daphne Barnes representing GNO Inc. in the New Orleans area, Region 1. Summer Dan with LSU in Region 2 here in Baton Rouge. But we also have Christy Landry at Fletcher Technical College, Angie Boxey at University of Louisiana Lafayette, Mark Arsenal over in Calcasieu School Board, Jennifer DePriest at Northwestern State University, Dr. Heather Kleiner up at Cyborg Discovery Center at the museum up there, Kathy Cox-Boniel at Louisiana Tech University, and Dr. Wendy Conero over at Southeastern University. The collective of us make up basically the LOSTEM initiative. So these regional centers, the goal for them is to basically support the classrooms as unique as the communities they serve. In this case, we all know that things that work in New Orleans are not going to work in Shreveport, things that work in Alexandria may not work in Calcasieu. And so we have to have this ability for each of my directors to be autonomous in their approach of connecting education and workforce in their areas. However, having the office located at the Board of Regents and having myself serving as the program administrator, we have what we call connected autonomy. This means that everything that they're doing is actually connected through our office, and we're able to then find the ones that are working the best and find solutions to then expand them. We're really excited about two of our state initiatives that I'm going to talk about here to you, but ultimately we have over 120 programs happening at our 9 centers collectively. This approach allows us to introduce innovative and emerging 21st century resources throughout Louisiana. Several of them I have out here on the table that we'll talk about as we go through. So the next step we had to do is we have a council, we have our directors in place, we have a plan, but we have to really put our comms together and what we're actually trying to message out. And so as I said, STEM has gotten lost with a lot of acronyms, a lot of different letters have been added in. And so we started looking to see how other states were addressing this. And what I have up here, I'm not going to go through them all, but ultimately these are the definitions that have been adopted by these respective states for STEM education. And what the highlight that I want to point out is that each of them are talking about that STEM is no longer just science, technology, engineering, and math. It's actually a pedagogy of hands-on learning that leads directly to career discovery or workforce opportunities. And we wanted our definition to reflect something similar at LaSTEM. So we developed this definition that was just approved in the December council meeting. And I'll read it for the record. STEM education, as defined by the Louisiana STEM Advisory Council, LaSTEM, is an integrated approach to learning about scientific, technological, engineering, and mathematical concepts and processes, as well as their applications in career and life. STEM education cultivates critical thinking, analysis, and collaboration skills applicable in real-world contexts, and there's a typo here, that is critical to all Louisiana citizens, that we add to the end of that sentence. It emphasizes dynamic, hands-on, experiential learning across the STEM spectrum, enabling students to creatively solve real-world problems through innovative design thinking. Skills developed through STEM prepares learners for success by providing authentic experiences relevant to 21st century life and work. So that whole big definition brings us in line now where these other acronyms that you may be familiar with, the STEMs, the STEAMs, the extra M's, whatever it might be, they all fit under this new definition. We can all be aligned, marching down the same path, saying that what we're doing here is actually hands-on experimental learning that is leading directly to these opportunities to understand better about the workforce that we have around us. Now we take that definition, because again, LaSTEM by itself is really just a state statute. And we work with our friends at LDOE in the STEM group, and we came up with these 5 key quality STEM definitions, basically what are the 5 features of quality STEM. And by putting these 5 features together with the definition, now we can actually go and we can highlight different programs that we have out here and make sure that they match up to what we say STEM is. What is it that we say is the best way for STEM to be out of school or wherever we're doing STEM? We want it to be able to meet these quality STEM expectations as well as meeting the definition. And by doing this, we have developed a very large network of partners. You can see here many of these partners are all working with LaSTEM, whether it be one of our regions or working as a statewide initiative. And this is just a highlight of some of them, of course, just to show you that it is very much a... oh, thank you. I was wondering if that was... All right. So this is just to highlight some of our partners. We're adding them every day. I actually have 2 or 3 that are waiting in the inbox right now. No, this won't change. All right. So 2 of those statewide initiatives I really want to focus on. One of them is our camps. We have the NASA Astro Camp, which is an education workforce connection. This is something that is now in its 5th year. The reason why we went with the NASA Astro Camp, along with my background with NASA, was that they are one of our largest employers here in the state. Many people don't realize that Michoud Assembly Facility has over 4,200 employees out there, whether they're working for NASA or working for one of the other organizations that's out there. There's a large conglomerate out there, and I happen to live in New Orleans, and I ask people all the time, do you know where they build the space shuttle? Nobody can answer this. Right in our backyard. They build the main engine there, since the main part of the rocket since the Apollo missions. And they are needing a lot of employees, and they need that expectation of what it is to work there. Right around the corner, only on exit 2 outside of Louisiana, we have Stennis Space Center, which is also in a group that has over 5,000 employees up there. So collectively, NASA has a huge need for employees. Many of them living here in Louisiana. Even if you work at Stennis, you're probably living in the Slidell area. So what we did with them is we used their Astro Camp. Stennis actually has an Astro Camp that anybody can sign up for. Many of our schools, many of our after-school programs use the Astro Camp model. Essentially, it opens up to a Google Live binder that gives you access to that year's theme and some different activities you can do, but it's really on that student, or really on that teacher or that facilitator to put it all together. Well, during the lockdown of 2020, we tried a different approach. We took the Astro Camp and we put it into a box. And that box basically has everything you need in it for a week's worth of activities, except for water. If you needed a half teaspoon of salt, it's in there. If you needed something, if you need a pencil, it's in there, because we don't expect that any of our students have any of these things at home. But we do anticipate that they probably have access to water. And so with that, our camps have over 22, Los Dem has over 22 themed camps that we do for the last few years. You can see some of them listed here. 2 of them, one of them right here is our AI Energy Camp. This one just won the World Oil Championships for Best Outreach of 2023. 22. Shell Energy Camp, which I don't have an example of here, 1 to 23. And Shell basically came back and told us it was their #1 outreach they have for connecting people to the work that they have there at their facilities. So how do we do it? Yeah, it's one thing to say, everybody kits things, everybody does Zooms, everybody can do in-persons. We do a lot of this. We have very successful initiatives out there already. What makes ours unique is that we're connecting it right with the workforce. And so last year we took our NASA camp, which has all these great activities that the kids are having fun doing, and it's K through 12, grade banded out K2, 3, 6, and then 7, 12. And we bring all those students together into a room in the beginning, a Zoom room, and we do a little bit of a, hey, here's what to expect today. We might have a guest speaker come in. Here's an example of the guest speakers we had just for 1 week. You might notice something about all of them. They're all females. These are all ladies that work at NASA, and we had them come in during those little powwow sessions and tell us their story. How did you end up at NASA? What is it that you do? What was your path to get there? And it was just a very exciting, illuminating experience for these students to see themselves or see people like them that are actually working at NASA. Because on day 1 of these camps, I'll ask the students, how many of you expect that you could work at NASA one day? Maybe 2 will raise their hand, because these are the ones that think they're going to be astronauts, right? Instead, by the end of the week, everybody raises their hand. They see themselves working at NASA. They see themselves working at Shell. They see themselves working in coastal restoration efforts, because we showed them that they could, and we showed them the connections. Something else cool that we did last year is we had the first ever downlink with the astronauts on the International Space Station. Our students actually were able to ask questions to the 2 astronauts up on the ISS, Frank Rubio and Woody Holberg. Both of them are back home now. But at the time, they were able to hear the students ask questions, and then they were able to respond back. Louisiana was one of the last 2 states in the union that had never had an ISS opportunity, and so we were very proud to bring that to our students last year. Another example of one of our statewide initiatives is our Sea Perch. Some of you may have got a chance to go to the LSU competition this weekend. But this is an example of our partners at the Department of Defense and Naval STEM coming to us and saying, we have this opportunity to do more of these underwater robots, but nobody was answering the phone when they would call. They had 50-some robots to give away, but everyone they called around the nation, not just here in Louisiana, was not answering the phone, and they were like, we're lost. And so hold on, let me call my 9 directors. Within about an hour, I had them all gone. Year 2 and 3, they gave us the entire grant to Louisiana. This is a corporation out in Maryland. And they come to us and they said, you showed us how to do it. You showed us that you could get into the classrooms, you had the connections, and you showed us success. And what that success looks like is 96 unique programs now in the state. Over 1,000 of their kits have been distributed for free. Over 4,600 students have been impacted, and 147 teachers have been trained in Sea Perch, which is also just robotics. So again, this has a lot of cross-training in other robotics and other engineering fields. So what I have next, again, just for time, I'm going to just highlight one from each of the centers. But what we have here, I asked each of my centers to give highlights of some of their programs that they'd like the Bessie board to see. And so I'll just go through the order here of some of the more successful ones. Daphne, I don't know if you'd like to.
Sure. I run the Region 1 Center for STEM, and as you can see here, we have 3 flagship programs. One is an HBCU Innovation Internship, which allows us to provide paid experiences to students in our region and also throughout the state at HBCUs, where they are both STEM and startup focused. So we're building entrepreneurs and innovators. You see the Wise Women Mentorship Program, which are young women, and you see us right there with the Artemis, which will put the first woman of color on the moon. We are there with the people who built it, the technicians and the engineers, the women, and our young women are there meeting them. And you can see from the work that we've done on the last picture, we're meeting the astronauts who are going up on Artemis next year. And we were awarded $100,000 from Boeing for the work that we're doing in the community.
And then Region 2, we have Summer Dan.
Good afternoon, thank you. So some of the things that I would like to highlight is that we have a partnership with the
Excuse me, we need a clarification here, Daphne, if you would. Help us to appreciate the acronym for WISE Women.
Women in the STEM economy. So this is for young women, high school. So come on down.
Thank you for the clarification. Sorry for the interruption, that was a clarification.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
That's great. Okay, so we have a partnership, it's called Ignite. It is with the Louisiana Department of Ed. Currently, we have 934 of your elementary teachers signed up to go through 40 hours of professional development on computer science. They'll be learning physical computing, they've learned some basics of programming, cybersecurity, and emerging technology. The other thing that we have is Way to Work. This is for university students to get a Python certification, and we're working towards moving that to another opportunity for the LDOE and dual enrollment. And then our last one is, so I'm housed with the Gordon A. Kane Center at LSU, and they offer the STEM pathway courses that are used at the Department of Ed. And one of the feedback things that we got was that we wanted to have more access, and so we have funded a translation project, which is translating some of those courses into Spanish. And you might be asking, why wouldn't they just use Google Translate? Well, Google Translate is not the best when you're talking about equations and some of the STEM concepts. And so what we have now is a proof of concept with a Step into STEM middle school course, and we're looking to do others this year.
My understanding is that Python is one of the languages that's used now for the neural network programming for AI.
Yes, that's, yes.
Thank you.
All right, so one of the things I also want to highlight is on the slide, you'll see the Department of Education logo next to some of them. These are ones that we're doing in direct support with the Department of Education. So that Ignite program is with our friends Jamie Mixon and John Underwood as well. Bayou STEM over in Fletcher, their big program that they have is community-based robotics. Sorry, it's cut off down there at the bottom, but it's what I wanted to talk to you all about. A lot of schools love to do robotics. First, Vex, we've heard all these, we really try to push it, but fact of the matter is, if you don't have a mentor at that school or you don't have the facilities to have that team, there's probably not going to be a team. And so what we've done at Lot STEM in conjunction with our friends at First and Vex is to develop community-based robotics teams. These are ones that are not necessarily tied to a school, but tied to the community. So if you have a student or two students at a smaller school or a couple smaller schools, they can now come together and join our community-based team. And I believe in the last round of funding from First, we have, is it 8? I think it's around 8 community-based teams that have now been funded throughout the state. So this is another opportunity for students that normally would not have normally had that chance to be on a robotics team to now be able to on these community-based teams. Region 4, I'd like to focus on the STEM leadership cohort learning. This is with their Department of Education and Angela Boxey over there. They're preparing educators at all levels to lead local STEM initiatives and professional development opportunities. So that way we can continue to grow this train-the-trainer model, continue to grow the network out to be able to quickly get teachers back up and running, provide them with that mentor support, especially if they're a new teacher, to help them find their footing and to stay in the classroom and not lose them. You all just had a chance, I know Bessie went over and visited Calcasieu and Mark Arsenal over there at the Boston School of Learning. They do a lot of great things. The one thing I like to focus that they do is robotics. They do robotics really well. They also do a lot of field trips. Again, that's our part of the state has a lot of schools that don't have access and so to quality STEM. And so by bringing these students on field trips to the facility, they have access to all these great technologies that we have with Region 5 over there. Region 6, they have supported rural STEM. And so in this case, Jennifer DePriest has created a acronym recipe, which stands for relevant, educational, career-minded, impactful, purposeful, and engaging. And this is what Recipe stands for, and it's her initiative to go out and try to connect with our rural schools and our rural students. She's up in the Alexandria area. She has 12 parishes that she supports up there. And so she came up with Rural STEM Day that she has in Alexandria, and she had the second one this year. The first year she had 675 participants. This year she had over 1,400 participants and even more coming for the year after. And had students coming from 4 of our regions, from 5, 6, 7, and 8. Again, showing the expansion, showing the growth of what we're doing, and showing that people want to be involved and want to have these experiences for their students as well. Region 7 is unique. It's actually at our museum. And so they have a different approach to how they do things. A lot of what they do is field trips to the museum, a lot of community engagement. You can see their numbers are off the charts because, again, it's a museum. They have lots of people coming through. But the one I'm super proud of is their Bars Without Barriers. This is turning incarcerated fathers into STEM role models. What they do is they go in and work with the incarcerated fathers in Caddo Parish Prison and in jail, and talk to them and provide them with some of these STEM activities, different things, where then when their family comes and meets with them, they can give them, they can go through that activity with their children or go through it with their families. And it really adds this connectiveness, gives them opportunities to understand what other jobs might be out there for them when they come out. And we help them stay connected in the program also when they come out through Heather and her support up there at Sideport. Region 8 over in La Tech, they do a lot of work with computer science. They were doing it before La STEM. They have been doing CS for All for many years, as well as the Louisiana Girls Collaborative. They've done some amazing work up there connecting females to STEM and continue to grow that out with the work that they were already doing. And then North Shore STEM, I want to point out that they have the Energize program, which is the second half of the Inspire program that Summer talked about. In this case, it's for 6th to 12th grade teachers to help them, to support them in passing the Praxis exam. And so we're seeing some really good growth in this as well. I believe we have a couple hundred teachers already signed up for this program. So just to give you a feel that some of the ideas of what we do at FLOSSTEM, also just teacher professional developments we've been doing quite a bit of. So some of these other clouds that you see up there may be things that you recognize, some you may not. But these are all ones that we've done the professional development and help support whatever the roles that we might need to be able to come in with our different centers. Goal there was over 1,200 teachers were trained at $0 to them or their schools, and the majority left resources or a stipend for their time. So last but not least, we do a lot of advocacy too. My team will be up in DC next week for STEMX on the Hill, where we'll be up advocating to our congressional leaders about the importance of what LawSTEM does and the importance of connecting it to the workforce, as well as we work across the street with our state reps to help them know that we exist and to do things just like we're doing right here for you all, advocacy and awareness, to let you know we're here and that we're available to help support any initiatives that you may see coming down the line as well. So our summit is our 1 year, every year we do an annual summit. I'd like to invite you all to come attend this year if you've never been able to do it. These are pictures from last year. Of course, Commissioner Reed, we also had Mark Perna as our keynote. We have a lot of interactivity. If you've been to a lot of these different conferences, you know some of them can be a lot of just sitting around and listening. Not at ours. We're going to have you in the middle, interacting, working with the students. We'll have robotics competitions. We have esports competitions. We had over 60 vendors with hands-on activities happening there. Teacher workshops, the works. So there's a lot happening to help keep our students and teachers engaged in what's out there for STEM. So 2024, it'll be October 8th in Lafayette at the Cajun Dome and Convention Center. We welcome you all to be there. I believe in your papers I provided, you have the save the date as well as our sponsorship form in case anybody knows some organization out there may be interested in supporting the summit. And last but not least, I did start the conversation by saying I wished I was a Navy fighter pilot. Well, through this work, last year I had the chance to actually be flown out with our Navy ambassador at GNOME to the Abraham Lincoln, which is about 100 miles off of the coast of San Diego, and got to watch flight operations for our full 24 hours. So there's some pictures of me out on the flight deck as well as up in the driving the ship, I think, up there. So I'd like to thank you all for the time and support for LawSTEM, and I'm happy to answer any questions as well as my directors too.
Great, thank you. Wonderful presentation, by the way. Questions, comments, Mr. Bell.
Thank you. I have one question, one point. Let me get a little deep into is we have a school in New Orleans, Sunoco, which is a really fine school, focuses on arts, entertainment, and so forth. And a few years ago, we did a little study, and what we found out was that large percentages of the students we were educating just left. They left the state. They didn't have jobs. And so I'm wondering, have y'all worked with the Workforce Commission to determine the extent of job opportunities in quantitative numbers? So that, I mean, I'm a STEM guy, I came from a STEM background, so I understand this. But what I don't want to see is us spend a lot of effort and get a lot of people excited about this, and then everybody, they just leave, because we can't produce jobs in this state to employ the people you guys are soliciting and working with. So I'm just curious, we haven't had any conversations with workforce, I'm just curious.
I appreciate that question, because it is part of my elevator speech when I'm talking to people about Law STEM is, what is it we're trying to do? Louisiana jobs for Louisiana citizens, and trying to minimize that brain drain that you mentioned. And the only way we can do that is by being honest about what jobs are out there. And so that's why we go directly to our workforce. We go to the NASAs, we go to the oil and gas industry. We are on the new NSF Engines grant. We'll be supporting that as well for some of the new training that's going to come out of that. And so, and one of the things I'm really excited about, not only having some of our council members that have seen their positions elevated as President Morris has, he's been on the council since the beginning, I believe, as well as Secretary Shoutman. She was our original co-chair of Law STEM, and so now that she's at the Louisiana Workforce Commission as secretary, we work very closely with her group to make sure that what we're out there doing is directly connected to the jobs that are here in our state.
Last month, Amazon Web Services announced 1,000 jobs in Mississippi, all tech jobs. And you already know Louisiana is the only state in the South that doesn't have an automotive manufacturing or parts supply business line. We lost 80,000 people or so in the last 8 years, let's say. You know, what you're doing is a really critical part, but there are other parts to this.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's great to push real hard. It's like NOCA. I mean, when we heard the numbers, and this was some years ago, about NOCA, it was just like, why are we paying for NOCA? They're all going to New York and Chicago.
I would like to comment on that.
Oh, sure.
I work in New Orleans, in Region 1, specifically for Greater New Orleans Inc., which is the Regional Economic Development Organization. And the programs that we put out specifically address what you're talking about. When we talk about internships, these are not students we're just having at GME. These are students who are actually working with STEM companies that are in our region. And so we give them these paid internships, and I'm proud to say that of the interns who have worked with us, 40% of them have been offered jobs in engineering, as technicians, in various research-based organizations. And so I would like to say that, and we are looking to, of course, expand that. So we want to make sure that our business community knows that we have a talent pipeline for them. And that's one of the things that we are building, because what we're finding out is that our companies are saying, we are tired of hiring people from outside of the state of Louisiana because they do not stay in the state of Louisiana. They come for 3 years and then they're leaving. So they are coming to us, and I have more businesses than I have interns right now. And so our companies are coming, our companies are on board, and we're building this out. So I think what you're saying is very poignant, and it's something that we are focusing on to make sure. And also we are working on, through our mentorship programs, exposure. Some of our kids are leaving Louisiana thinking that we don't have opportunity for them here, but in actuality we do, but they don't know. As Clint said earlier, we have students who do not know that NASA Math is building all of these rocket ships that they see on TV, and they are desperate for technicians. We work with UNES to drive students in high school where they can graduate to become an aerospace technician. When they graduate with their high school diploma, they can also graduate as an aerospace technician and go work directly for Boeing and Lockheed Martin. That's right in our backyard. And they need multiple people, so we are driving them into those pathways.
And my other point is, again, I'm an engineer, so in the acronym STEM, what I don't see in the presentation, and yet what is the most important letter of all is the M, math. Because all the rest of STEM is dependent on math. And one of the things we're going to be doing, I know, is really emphasizing the importance of math education and so forth here. I guess my question to you guys is there anything you can do to dispel the notion, especially amongst women, that math is just impossible to conquer? And without math, all STEM collapses.
I got my engineer here, she makes it.
Me
So
too.
yes, my background's engineering
He's one
as well.
too, so you
Yes.
got two of them.
So one of the things I did want to highlight is that all of the centers have advisory committees that are, that influence what we're doing. So one of the things that we specifically looked at, or that we are looking at with the pilot with Ignite, is how implementation using a physical computer or physical items increase literacy, and that includes math literacy. I also report to a math professor who is very adamant that we include math in the math background. So yes, that is being, and I always say it's the language of STEM. Math is the language.
Math is everything for STEM, and there's always been this fear amongst kids. We can't do math. It's impossible. All math is a different language. It's just a different language, and if there's some way we could just get people to get off the idea that they can't do it, and they can do it. So, anyway.
There's another program that's coming through, which is Engineering is Elementary. It's a K-8 program that's going to be coming through Region 8. It also incorporates math and the basics of engineering. So hopefully that helps with our math.
And I'd like to say that our mentorship program, the young women who have graduated, 100% of those young women have chosen to be engineering majors, and 92% of them are staying in the state of Louisiana, where they can get a great education from Louisiana universities.
I'll add one more thing, is that the C-STEM program is being piloted right now over in Calcasieu Parish and a couple other spots, I believe. And it does all math. It's a small robot, and the students are actually doing math to essentially get it to go where it needs to go. And so we do. But yeah, and I also have Louisiana Association of Teachers in Mathematics as a council member, so I hear quite a bit that we need to make sure we always keep the math in there.
Ms. Holloway.
Yes, thank you. This is fantastic, incredible work. And I can talk from an experienced sixth grade science teacher, recognized as an outstanding elementary science teacher. And when you mentioned discovery, I had already wrote it down because I remember, and you said evolve. And I went, this is so good because we evolved to where you are sitting here. Because back, we're going to talk about the late 80s, early 90s, when science was taking a turn for discovery learning, critical thinking, hands-on, and it was just a passion for all of us that were teaching science at the time. And so it's quite rewarding to hear what you have presented today. But I'll give you a little history. There's the science word, that's with the alligator. That was during my time when we were with the Science Association, and our administrator was a former high school teacher, was very involved. We did state conventions, national convention presentations, and he was part of the creation of that word, science. I'm like, this is just so amazing. And t-shirts were made, we wore the t-shirts, and still today it carries on. So it tells you how important that science, and now the involvement of the math, the technology, and et cetera, so forth. Fletcher is in my backyard. I've met Christy Landry, doing a great job, and I was trying to piece what she was trying to say, and with the work around the state, and today I got it all. Okay, I see it now, how it's all working together, and thank you for that. I appreciate that. This is great
You're
work.
very welcome, and I gotta say that's where I started, was at Fletcher as a dean of STEM, so I was able to hand that over to Christy before I got put up here, so yeah, it's a great product for work down here.
Oh, that's great, but thank you for that.
Great, thank you, Ms. Holloway. Mr. Morris.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Coleman, so much for bringing your team, and giving us some appreciation for the work that's being done. I had a couple questions, a couple comments. Really appreciate the comments from members today, especially from Senator Pell, with regard to connecting the workforce with STEM education. And during our retreat, we had some conversation about building a bridge between K-12 education and the workforce. And we need an architect for that, someone that can have some appreciation for the process on both sides of the bridge. Students approach the bridge, get some appreciation for the opportunities that are on top of the bridge. I think today, as you guys have shared with us, a lot of cases, students don't really appreciate what the opportunities are. We need to make those opportunities aware, raise the awareness of those opportunities. And then also, as they approach that bridge, have some appreciation that they can change lanes. You know, it's okay if my interests start out one way and end up in another way. That's just part of my high school experience. And then when they get to the top of the bridge and they see what's on the other side, then we've got these internships, these apprenticeships and so forth, where they can get those experiences and then coast into a career pathway. And so I think there's a lot of work there to build that bridge. Personally, I think the first step is we need an architect for that. I've talked to the Secretary about that. I know she's working on that. I'm looking forward to more conversations in that space. But I think the bridge is a really important concept. We all need to stay focused on it. So a couple questions. I think maybe you guys are aware that the board passed a motion today to ask LDOE to come back to us next month with a recommendation for how we recognize the value of these apprenticeships and internships in the accountability system so that school systems have some incentive to present these opportunities for students. Can you help me today, or help us today, appreciate what, if any, value there is in the accountability system for students to participate in STEM activities? Is there anything that we should be considering when we come back in June to address Mr. Hollis's motion, which is for LDOE to come back with other tweaks to the accountability system that are going to help us to improve student outcomes? So we recognize the importance of this work, it makes education relevant for students, but we've got to have some incentives there for school systems to engage. So I'm interested in base case today, what kind of incentives are there for school systems to provide these opportunities for students? I know interest in opportunities, I think it's in there, that's 5%. Is there anything else in there that's going on today, and then what would your thoughts be, recommendations going forward?
As far as I understand, it's just the 5% that's on there right now. Anything that we can do to help increase that in the schools, I think is going to be really important. As Summer pointed out, there's plenty of research out there showing that hands-on activities helps the student actually truly understand and grasp what it is we're trying to convey to them. And so things like literacy, we do a really great STEM and literacy piece as well. You know, for instance, we have to do a lot of work in ELA. I know you all do that. We're really pushing a lot of that to help try to fix some of the COVID loss and other loss that we have out there. And that means that STEM has to take a side sometimes in most schools. They think, oh, well, we don't have time for STEM because we got to focus on ELA. That's not true. We got lots of programs. I think we have at least 3 that I can think on top of my head right now that a school could take right now to bring literacy and tie STEM to it. And so things like that I think would be really important for the schools to know that they're not in it alone to try to figure out how to do this, but that we have the support of not only the Board of Regents and Department of Education, but also the directors and the regional centers to find those solutions for their particular school, which is what we've asked the schools to do. We've asked them to reach out to their directors and help find those solutions for what they might be looking for.
So I appreciate your comment about the ELL students, and to me that just adds more credence to this idea of all these different committees we talked about today that provide input to this board. And if we can get those committees talking to each other, we can leverage the expertise from different committees, right, to benefit the whole. And it's a great example. You guys should be going to the ELL committee meetings, sharing what opportunities are available there so that they can bring recommendations back to this board.
Can I add one thing to this sentence? Okay, so the STEM pathway courses that are currently offered through LDOE are hands-on courses, and so supporting funding of those courses for teacher training and for supplies is very similar to CTE. You have to have a specialized teacher, they have to have the training, and they have to have the supplies and equipment to offer it. So any way to support those courses and the STEM pathways would be awesome.
Yeah, so if you could bring a specific recommendation back to us on that, for the board to consider, we'd appreciate that. You also mentioned after-school activities. I get a lot of feedback about, attendance is a big issue now. How do we get kids off the streets, into schools, and after-school activities keeps them off the street, right? It gives them an opportunity to find some value in that time. So I'd like to hear more about after-school activities. And then the last one is that we heard from Dr. Singleton earlier with the KPI report for the work that's going on in her space. We heard from the SEAT group and KPI reporting there, so we get some appreciation for priorities in these specific areas of interest, what the goals are, what the progress is, and so forth. I'm interested in you guys developing some KPIs. Help us to appreciate, what the priorities are, where's the value, what kind of specific goals should we be looking at for student learning experiences. Okay, to me, that's what the kids tell me. Hey, Mr. Morris, make education relevant, right? That's going to get me going to school because it's interesting. So if you guys can help us out with some recommendations on that, we can talk about how you channel that through one of these committees or whatever. But I'd like to get an update from you guys so we have a sense of what kind of progress you're making, particularly with regard to student engagement.
I can mention briefly, one of the stories I like to tell is from a student over in Lake Charles. His nickname was Caveman. He basically was called Caveman because he liked to use tools and just bang on things. And so he got this weird nickname from his robotics team. But he stopped coming to the robotics club, which is a huge part. You have to have the attendance to be on the robotics team. And so our coach reached out to him and asked what he was doing. He says, well, unfortunately, I have 2 jobs I have to work to support my family. And we convinced him that maybe it wasn't necessary to do these 2 jobs, and if he could just spend some time on the robotics team, that we could potentially change his thoughts on what he could do in his future. Long story short, he came and joined the robotics team. We got him to come and stay. He got a full ride scholarship to La Tech University in the engineering program, because we were able to show him the value of STEM and be able to connect it to relevance that you're talking about. And I guarantee you every single one of my directors can have a handful of stories to share with you about that. And then on the other piece that I'd like to mention, everything we do is data-driven. This is a report just for the shell camp. All data in here talking about exactly what it is that the students experienced, what it was that they did that year, and all the feedback that we're able to receive. This is important for us to be able to go tell the story of what we do and to be able to go tell our sponsors, yes, it is working. And so each of my 9 directors are required to report quarterly on what they're doing based on the KPIs that the council put together over the years. And then we measure that with performance reports, which the annual report that you all have a copy of, the legislative report for La STEM, was built off of those performance reports. So we do have that piece as well, Mr. Morris.
Great. Any other questions, comments from our board? Again, well, thank you. Wonderful presentation. Keep up the great work.
Just real quick, still in Coppership Parish is in my district, but toured it, great facility over there. Any plans, any other STEM centers? I know Lake Charles is one, Lafayette, or other places as well, trying to do more?
To have a physical space?
Yes, I mean, Coppership Parish has their STEM. Is Lafayette Parish might have one, or planning on are you planning to help them do more, or whatever?
I think the best way to answer that is to go back to the statewide initiatives that each of my 9 directors have on their requirements. And so what we do is some of those programs, such as Daphne's Wise Women program, it started in New Orleans and now it's in Acadiana as well. So it grew over there. And so I think things like the VIP program that's at the VIP program that's at Calcasieu over there in Lake Charles, we're going to see that expand as well. La STEM was part of the initial funding to help get that started. And so we'll be very excited to see that grow as well, whether it be statewide or be at these regional areas.
Great. Any other comments, questions? Thanks again.
Thank you.
All right, next item, please.
You need a
Any objections to the motion? Motion passes.
All right, your next item is on page 45, item 3.1, consideration of the appointment of the Recovery School District Superintendent. The recommendation is to approve.
Great, so the motion? So a motion by Dr. Armstrong, is there a second by Mr. Harris? This is Schmidt?
Yeah, policy, Mr. Castillo requires that I receive consent of the board before the appointment of the RSD superintendent. You should have a resume for Dr. Pam Schooler in your backup. She is immensely qualified to do this work, and no offense to anyone else, but there's not a finer human in this building than Dr. Pam Schooler. And there's a lot of work that we need to do with a number of schools, and we really need someone in that role to begin those efforts. And so I certainly recommend your consent to the appointment of Dr. Pam Schooler, who has previously served as interim assistant superintendent of school choice, to be the RSD superintendent.
All right, great, thank you. Any questions or comments from the board? We have two public comment cards. If there are no questions or comments from the board, I first have up Ms. Caroline Romer, who supports the recommendation and wishes to speak, and Rob Shadorn. Shadwin, see, I will,
just depending on where you're from.
no, I will tell you that, Mr. Shadwin, we just could not use your handwriting, so we're going to talk about that. Mr. Shadwin, you're up next, supports the recommendation, wishes to speak.
Good afternoon, I'm Caroline Romer. I'm the Executive Director of the Louisiana Association of Public Charter Schools. We've got a long day, so I'll be super brief, but normally I would pass, but I too wanted to come up and just say a few words about Pam Schooler. I've been in my position now for 16 years and have had the opportunity to work with many school leaders across the state, and some of them I would come up and speak against, but I'm actually here today to speak in favor of Pam Schooler. We've been together for over 10 years now, I think. It's been a long time. I first met Pam when she was leading Darwin Woods and Union Parish, but if you look at her resume, you'll see that as an educator, she has a really great variety of positions that she has had that I think will lend to the job that's ahead of her. Superintendent of the Recovery School District is not an easy job, but Pam comes with experience, urban and rural, traditional school systems, charter schools. She's done turnaround. She's worked for virtual charter schools. She's been inside the building. She's worked for districts and HR. She, again, brings a lot of experience that she's going to need in this job. Furthermore, I think that Pam is someone that really seeks out collaboration, and she listens and takes the time to get the viewpoint of a lot of different people. But most importantly, Pam Schooler is someone that is hyper-focused on outcomes for kids. I think that she will make a wonderful leader inside the Recovery School District and LAPCS. We really look forward to working with her. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Mr. Shadwin?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members, Dr. Rumlin. I have known Pam Schooler probably since 2010 or 11, somewhere along in there. She was the principal of Farmerville High School when we first met, but we were going through a consolidation and closing of a lot of schools in Union Parish, where we ended up with just really one high school in that whole parish, Union Parish High School. And she navigated through those closures and consolidations, which you might know in a rural area can bring out a lot of sentiments. I had the privilege of serving Lincoln and Union Parish in District 12, and I served with member Paul Hollis and Lance Harris, and I served across the Memorial Hall from Senator Appel. And in my working and serving the people, I noticed that Pam had a lot of drive, and she ended up being tab for the, I still call it principal, I don't know what but at Darwin Woods Charter School, where they started off in an old Walmart building, grades K through 6. And what they did to transform that old store into a learning environment was absolutely incredible to me. But she was also instrumental in providing and securing an $18 million USDA grant to build a new Darbone Woods charter school. So through all of this, I noticed her, first of all, her diligence, her professionalism, her organization, but she's done this all with a compassionate view toward the people she works with, particularly the children, which always impressed me very much. You will make a good decision, if I say so myself, if you will follow the recommendation and hire Pam Schooler for this position. Thank you for your time. I'll be glad to answer any questions, but that's all from me.
Great.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
You bet.
Any questions, comments from the board?
Just like Dr. Schooler to stand to be recognized. You may not know Dr. Schooler, new members.
It sounds like a favorable vote to me. There'll be
From our staff, anyway.
From the staff, and I presume from the board. No objections, the motion passes. I think that concludes our agenda. We are adjourned.